Hi, and welcome to freenetworkstudy.com. Today we'll work on frame relay, and we will be doing a more advanced lab. Looking at the diagram, we see that we'll be configuring a /24 subnet on a hub and spoke network and a /30 subnet on a separate point-to-point network. Now jumping to the requirements list, we are told to use physical interfaces on router 2 and 3 and a multi-point subinterface on router 1. We're also told to use a physical interface on router 4 and a point-to-point subinterface on router 1. The last interesting point, we're not allowed to use static mapping on router 4. Okay, let's get started. We'll start by configuring the hub and spoke. On router 1, looking at the configuration, we see that we have an IP address on 00/0. Let's remove that IP address, interface serial 0/0. No IP address. Now let's create the multi-point subinterface for the hub and spoke network. First, let's enable frame relay encapsulation on the interface. So encapsulation frame relay. Now let's create the multi-point subinterface. Interface serial 0/0 dot 1 multi-point. Assign it IP address 10.1.1.1/24. IP address 10.1.1.1/24. Now, since this is a multi-access subinterface, we'll have to statically map layer 3 to layer 2. So let's start with the remote spoke, router 2. So frame relay map IP. The IP address of router 2, that's 10.1.1.2, and the local DLC is 102, and enable server broadcast. Let's do the same thing with router 3. Frame relay map IP 10.1.1.3, that's DLC 103 broadcast. Now we can do the same thing on router 2, and keep in mind that the requirement says that we're not allowed to use subinterfaces on routers 2 and 3. So on router 2, interface serial 0/0, and here we'll be using the physical interface. Since it's a hub and spoke network, we'll use static mapping. So let's start by mapping router 1's IP address. Frame relay. Oh, of course, we have to enable frame relay encapsulation first. Encapsulation frame relay. Now let's map. Frame relay map IP router 1's IP address 10.1.1.1, the local DLC 201, and enable broadcast. Now let's do the same thing for router 3's IP address. So frame relay map IP 10.1.1.3, and the same unique local DLC 201 without the broadcast command this time. Okay, now let's jump on router 3. Right, on router 3 we're not allowed to use subinterfaces, so we'll configure interface 00/0 encapsulation frame relay and the frame relay maps. So let's start with router 1's IP address. Frame relay map IP 10.1.1.1 301, that's the local DLC, and broadcast. Now let's map router 2's IP address. Frame relay map IP 10.1.1.2 the same DLC number, no broadcast command. Right, let's check IP connectivity on the hub and spoke network. From router 3, let's ping router 1, ping 10.1.1.1. It's working. Now let's ping router 2, 10.1.1.2. That's great. Okay, let's continue by configuring the point-to-point network. You can start on router 4. Checking the configuration. Right. So we're told to use a physical interface on router 4 and a point-to-point sub-interface on router 1. Let's do that. Interface serial 0/0 encapsulation frame relay. The requirements list also states that we are not supposed to do any static mapping on router 4. That's not an issue since router 4 only has one DLC configured. So let's enable it here. Frame relay interface DLC, and that's 401. Let's jump back on router 1 and create the point-to-point sub-interface. Interface serial 0/0.2 point-to-point. Give it an IP address. IP address 10.1.2.1, and that's the /30, so that's 255.255.255.252. Now let's assign the local DLC to the sub-interface. That's frame relay interface DLC. That's 104. Now let's try to ping router 4 from router 1. Ping 10.1.2.2. And that's working. So now we have full IP connectivity. Thank you for watching.